You're listening to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, created to help you succeed in your Security Plus certification journey. Learn more at baremetalcyber.com, where additional prepcasts, books, and training materials await. Let's get started. The goals of secure password management are straightforward but critical. Reduce the likelihood of credential theft, limit the damage caused by password reuse, and provide safe ways to recover accounts when credentials are lost. Credentials remain one of the most targeted elements in any system because they are often the first and easiest path for attackers. Weak password practices open the door to phishing, brute force attacks, and credential stuffing. Secure password management establishes guardrails so that even if one layer is breached, others remain intact. It involves not just rules about how users create and use passwords, but also how systems store, monitor, and protect them. In practice, good password management means that users can log in conveniently while attackers face significant hurdles. It is not just about complexity or memorization. It is about designing systems that minimize human error, anticipate common attack strategies, and enforce safeguards automatically wherever possible. Understanding password composition versus entropy is essential for moving past outdated rules. For many years, organizations forced users to include uppercase letters, numbers, and special characters in their passwords. While this produced strings like P@SSW0RD, the substitutions were predictable and easy for attackers to guess with modern cracking tools. Entropy, essentially the randomness and length of the password, is what truly matters. A 16-character passphrase like Yellow River Dog Sky has far more entropy than an 8-character password with substitutions. Longer and more random passwords create exponentially more possibilities for attackers to try, making brute force attacks impractical. This shift explains why modern guidance from groups like NIST recommends length and randomness over complexity rules. For learners, think of it like guessing a lock combination. Adding more dials makes it harder to crack, but replacing one number with a symbol does little if the overall combination is short. Password reuse across accounts, both personal and corporate, remains one of the most dangerous and common practices. Attackers frequently exploit this by stealing a password from a breached personal site and trying it against corporate logins. This tactic, called credential stuffing, succeeds whenever users recycle passwords across environments. The danger is magnified because personal accounts often have weaker protections than corporate ones, making them easier to compromise. For example, if an attacker obtains someone's email and password from a hacked social media site, they may use it to access business email if the same credentials are reused. Preventing reuse requires both user education and technical controls, such as enforcing unique passwords and monitoring for exposure on breach lists. It is not enough to tell users don't reuse passwords. Systems must actively help enforce and encourage safe practices by making unique, strong credentials easier to manage and harder to ignore. How passwords are stored by systems matters just as much as how they are created. Storing plain-text passwords, the actual words users type, is catastrophic because any breach immediately exposes all credentials. Instead, systems must store passwords using secure hashing algorithms. Algorithms like bcrypt and Argon2 are designed specifically for password storage. They transform the password into an irreversible string of characters. When a user logs in, the system hashes the entered password and compares it to the stored hash. This way, the original password is never stored or transmitted. Using fast, general-purpose algorithms like SHA-256 without modification is risky because attackers can brute force them quickly. Password hashing algorithms are intentionally slow, making large-scale cracking much harder. For learners, think of hashing like putting a password through a one-way shredder. You cannot reconstruct the original paper from the shredded strips, but you can feed another copy through to check if the pieces match. Salting hashes adds another critical layer of protection. A salt is a random value added to each password before hashing, ensuring that even if two users choose the same password, their stored hashes look different. Without salts, attackers can use pre-computed lookup tables, often called rainbow tables, to reverse engineer passwords quickly. With salts, those tables become useless because every password requires unique computation. For example, if two users both pick summer 2024, their stored hashes will still be unique due to different salts. This means an attacker cannot simply apply one crack universally. Properly salted and hashed passwords make mass compromise far more expensive and time-consuming. Salts must be generated randomly and stored alongside the hash, while the hashing algorithm handles the combination. For students new to this, the analogy is cooking. Even if two people use the same recipe, adding different spices, the salts, makes the final dish unique. Password policies are the rules organizations set to guide how users create and manage their credentials. Historically, these policies emphasized complexity requiring uppercase, lowercase, numbers, and special characters. However, this often backfired by making passwords harder to remember and encouraging insecure habits, like writing them down or reusing them across sites. Modern policy guidance favors longer passwords or passphrases and discourages frequent forced resets unless compromise is suspected. The goal is balance, strong enough to resist attacks but not so burdensome that users undermine the system with workarounds. For example, requiring a 16-character password with no restrictions is often stronger and easier than requiring an 8-character string with complex rules. Policies must also account for friction. If users cannot easily comply, they will resist or bypass. Good policies pair requirements with tools like password managers to make compliance natural rather than painful. Security, after all, should empower users, not frustrate them. Password managers have become essential tools for implementing least privilege at the human level. These tools generate, store, and autofill unique, strong passwords for every account. For individual users, managers prevent password reuse and reduce phishing risk by only autofilling on legitimate websites. For teams, enterprise password managers add features like shared vaults, audit logs, and centralized policy enforcement. For example, a DevOps team can share credentials securely through a vault rather than passing them around in chat messages. By relieving users from the impossible task of remembering dozens of unique, complex passwords, managers turn good policy into practical reality. Critics sometimes worry about creating a single point of failure, but modern password managers use strong encryption, multi-device syncing, and multi-factor authentication to mitigate risks. In practice, using a reputable manager is far safer than relying on human memory or insecure storage methods like spreadsheets. Applications also need secure ways to handle secrets, and this is where secrets vaulting comes in. Hard coding credentials into source code or configuration files is dangerous, because those files may be exposed in version control, logs, or backups. Secrets vaults provide centralized encrypted storage for application credentials, API keys, and certificates. Instead of embedding secrets, applications retrieve them at runtime through secure APIs. This approach allows automated rotation of secrets and audit logging of access. For example, a web application needing a database password fetches it securely from a vault rather than storing it in plain text. Vaulting is critical for DevOps and cloud environments, where automation increases the risk of secret sprawl. By centralizing control, organizations can reduce accidental leaks and respond quickly to incidents. For learners, think of vaulting as a high-security safe. Instead of scattering keys around the house, you keep them locked in one place with strong monitoring. Rotation policies govern how often credentials should be changed. In the past, organizations often required users to reset passwords every 30, 60, or 90 days. Research has shown this practice can backfire, encouraging users to make minimal, predictable changes, such as incrementing a number. Modern guidance recommends rotating only when compromise is suspected, except for highly sensitive systems. For service accounts and application credentials, rotation remains important to reduce long-term exposure. Automated vaults make this easier by issuing short-lived credentials that rotate automatically without user involvement. For human accounts, the focus is shifting toward unique, strong passphrases and MFA rather than frequent resets. Rotation still matters, but should be applied intelligently, targeting high-risk scenarios rather than universally. The guiding principle is that security controls should reduce risk without creating unnecessary user burden. Automated, policy-driven rotation provides that balance. Detection mechanisms complement password management by spotting attacks in progress. Credential stuffing, where attackers try stolen username password pairs from breaches, can be detected by monitoring login attempts against known leaked lists. Anomalous login patterns, such as logins from unusual geographies or devices, can trigger alerts or step up authentication. Integrating threat intelligence feeds of compromised passwords helps organizations block logins with known breached credentials. For example, Microsoft and Google automatically prevent users from selecting passwords already found in public leaks. Monitoring adds a proactive dimension, catching attempts even when users make mistakes. Without detection, password defenses can be blind to real-time threats. With it, organizations gain the ability to respond dynamically, blocking suspicious behavior before it turns into compromise. Detection is not just about security, it is about resilience and visibility, ensuring that systems are not relying solely on static controls. Recovery flows are often the weakest link in password management. Attackers know that many organizations implement MFA or strong password policies but fail to secure recovery processes. If an attacker can call a help desk and convince staff to reset a password based on easily guessed information, all other controls collapse. Secure recovery flows require validated proof of identity, such as backup codes, pre-registered hardware tokens, or secondary channels verified during enrollment. Social engineering resistance must be built in, with scripts and policies for help desk staff to follow. Recovery should never rely solely on email, as compromised inboxes are often the first step in an attack. Done right, recovery becomes a strength, allowing legitimate users to regain access quickly without giving attackers a shortcut. It requires as much care in design as enrollment or daily authentication, because in real-world attacks, recovery is often the path of least resistance. A practical starting point for applying these principles is to focus on one critical service. First, ensure its credentials are not hard-coded in configuration files, but instead stored securely in a vault. Next, rotate the credential to eliminate any stale exposure and validate that the application can retrieve it dynamically through the vault's API. This exercise demonstrates both technical and operational improvement. The credential is better protected, and the system continues to function smoothly after the change. Expanding this practice across multiple services builds momentum and trust in secure password management. For beginners, this exercise illustrates that password management is not abstract. It is hands-on and impactful. Each step reduces real-world risk and closes doors attackers might otherwise exploit. By starting small, organizations can gradually replace weak practices with secure ones, building a culture where strong password management is the default, not an afterthought. Passphrases represent a shift in how we think about secure authentication compared to traditional passwords. While passwords often rely on short strings with character complexity, passphrases encourage users to choose longer sequences of words that are easier to remember yet harder to crack. For example, correct horse battery staple is both memorable and offers far greater entropy than TR0UB4 door, even though the latter appears more complex at first glance. Passphrases take advantage of length rather than substitution tricks, which means attackers face exponentially more combinations to guess. They are also user-friendly since humans remember meaningful words or phrases more easily than random strings. For organizations, encouraging passphrases helps align usability with security, lowering the need for unsafe coping mechanisms such as writing passwords down. While passphrases are not foolproof, users must still avoid using common phrases or dictionary combinations. They represent a practical middle ground that empowers users while still resisting brute force attacks. This is why modern standards, including NIST, recommend encouraging length and simplicity over arcane complexity rules. Complexity rules, such as requiring one uppercase letter, one symbol, and one number, once dominated password policy. The thinking was that complexity forced randomness, but in practice, people used predictable patterns. Password 1 met the rule, but provided little real security. Frequent forced expiration had similar unintended effects. Users made small, predictable changes like incrementing digits, which attackers could anticipate. Modern guidance discourages rigid complexity requirements and arbitrary expiration. Instead, the focus is on encouraging longer passphrases, blocking known compromised passwords, and using MFA to mitigate residual risk. Complexity rules are not useless, but when taken to extremes, they create friction that pushes users toward insecure behavior. Password policies should be rooted in evidence about what truly reduces compromise, not outdated assumptions. A password that is long, unique, and easy to recall is stronger than a shorter, convoluted one created only to satisfy complexity checkboxes. For learners, this shift reflects security maturing from rigid rule enforcement to smarter human-centered design. Defenses against brute force attacks extend beyond password length. Rate limiting and progressive delays ensure that repeated failed login attempts slow down attackers significantly. For example, after 5 failed attempts, a system may add a 30-second delay before allowing another try, doubling the delay with each subsequent failure. Lockout policies add another layer, temporarily freezing an account after too many failed attempts. These measures prevent automated bots from hammering login pages with thousands of guesses per second. However, policies must be carefully tuned. Overly aggressive lockouts can create denial of service risks, where attackers intentionally trigger lockouts for legitimate users. Balancing usability with defense is key. Progressive delays are often the sweet spot, slowing attackers without punishing real users too harshly. For learners, imagine trying to guess a combination lock where each wrong attempt forces you to wait longer before trying again. At some point, the attack becomes impractical, which is exactly the point of rate limiting. Checking passwords against breached password lists is another modern control that helps prevent weak choices. Many users still choose passwords that have already been exposed in past breaches, such as 123,456 or QWERTY 123. Attackers routinely use these lists when attempting credential stuffing. By integrating breach checking at authentication time, organizations can block users from selecting known compromised passwords. Services like Have I Been Pwned provide massive datasets of breached credentials that organizations can reference securely. This step significantly reduces the pool of weak, guessable passwords in circulation. The process does not expose the actual password to external systems. Instead, it uses techniques like k-anonymity to preserve privacy, while confirming whether a chosen password is unsafe. Blocking breached passwords raises the floor of security across the user base, ensuring that even those with poor password habits cannot choose dangerously common secrets. It is a simple but powerful way to close an often overlooked gap in password hygiene. Multi-factor authentication complements password management by addressing its inherent weaknesses. Even with the best policies, passwords can still be phished, guessed, or stolen through malware. MFA ensures that a compromised password alone is not enough for attackers. By requiring a second factor, such as a hardware key, push notification, or biometric, MFA raises the bar significantly. Organizations should view MFA not as optional, but as a mandatory safeguard for high-value accounts. In practice, password management and MFA are two sides of the same coin. Password management reduces the likelihood of compromise, and MFA reduces the impact when compromise happens. Together, they provide layered defense that accounts for both human error and determined attackers. For example, A stolen password from a breach becomes useless if the attacker cannot also steal the user's registered authenticator app or hardware key. Passwords alone are no longer sufficient. MFA is the safety net that prevents a single mistake from becoming a full-scale breach. Applications and development pipelines also require secure secret management, which goes beyond human passwords. In continuous integration and continuous delivery environments, also called CI/CD pipelines, code often needs access to databases, APIs, or cloud services. Hard-coding credentials into scripts or storing them in plain files is highly risky. Programmatic secret injection replaces this with ephemeral tokens retrieved from secure vaults at runtime. These tokens are short-lived, automatically rotated, and scoped to the exact permissions needed. By eliminating static credentials, pipelines become resilient against leaks in source code repositories or logs. For learners, think of this as replacing a permanent master key with a temporary visitor badge that works only once and only for a specific door. Programmatic injection enforces least privilege automatically and provides audit logs for every retrieval. This approach closes one of the most common security gaps in modern software development, where secrets often leak accidentally during automation. Audit and access logging are essential for any vault or secret management system. Every time a password, key, or token is retrieved, the action should be logged with details about who accessed it, when, and for what purpose. These logs create accountability and allow organizations to detect misuse. For example, if a service account suddenly retrieves credentials at unusual times or in higher volume, it may indicate compromise. Logs also support compliance by demonstrating that secrets are managed and monitored, not left unchecked. Without logging, vaults become black boxes where sensitive operations happen invisibly. With logging, they become transparent systems where actions can be reviewed, investigated, and corrected if needed. Effective logging must be combined with monitoring and alerting, turning records into actionable intelligence. Just as surveillance cameras deter theft in physical spaces, logging deters abuse in digital secret management by ensuring everything is visible to auditors and defenders alike. Backups and disaster recovery are sometimes neglected when discussing secret stores, but they are essential. If a vault or key management system fails without backups, organizations could lose access to critical credentials, effectively locking themselves out of their own systems. Secure backups ensure that secrets can be restored quickly in case of corruption, system failure, or disaster. However, backups themselves must be encrypted and protected since they contain highly sensitive information. Access to recovery data should be tightly controlled and logged. Disaster recovery planning includes not only technical backups but also rehearsals of recovery procedures. Teams must know how to restore vaults under pressure, ensuring business continuity. Without planning, a vault failure can halt operations as surely as a cyber attack. With it, organizations can recover smoothly, maintaining trust and minimizing downtime. Backup and recovery are therefore not secondary tasks. They are foundational to the resilience of secure password management systems. Hashing parameter tuning is a more technical but vital part of secure password management. Algorithms like bcrypt, scrypt, and Argon 2 allow administrators to set work factors that determine how computationally expensive each hash is to compute. Increasing this cost slows down attackers trying to brute force millions of guesses, but it also impacts legitimate authentication performance. The goal is to tune parameters high enough that brute force becomes impractical, while keeping login times reasonable for users. For example, Argon 2 allows adjustments for memory and time cost, making it resistant to specialized cracking hardware like GPUs or ASICs. Tuning must evolve over time, since computing power grows cheaper and faster. What is safe today may be insufficient tomorrow. Administrators should revisit hashing parameters regularly, aligning them with current threat models and hardware capabilities. For learners, it is useful to think of hashing like turning a crank. The harder you set it, the more effort it takes to run. But both users and attackers must turn it, Migrating secrets from insecure storage to a vault is a delicate but necessary step for many organizations. The process should be structured and phased to avoid disruptions. First, identify where secrets currently reside: configuration files, scripts, or environment variables. Next, test moving them into a vault in a controlled environment, ensuring applications can retrieve them securely through APIs. Once tested, rotate the credentials to invalidate any old copies, then revoke access to the insecure locations. Finally, monitor for any residual references and clean up. This migration must be planned carefully to avoid downtime, but when done correctly, it eliminates one of the most common causes of accidental leaks. For learners, it is like moving valuables from hiding spots under the mattress to a bank vault. The process requires care and trust, but the long-term security payoff is undeniable. Secure migration transforms secret handling from ad hoc to professional-grade protection. User education is a crucial complement to technical controls. Even the strongest password policies and vaulting systems can be undermined if users fall victim to phishing or mishandle credentials. Training should emphasize creating unique passphrases, avoiding reuse, and using password managers properly. Education should also cover recognizing phishing attempts, reporting suspicious login prompts, and understanding recovery procedures. Reinforcing safe habits reduces help desk calls and improves compliance with security policies. For example, teaching employees that MFA push approvals should never be granted unless they initiated the login can block attacks before they succeed. User education turns security from a set of abstract rules into practical behaviors that employees understand and adopt. Without it, policies feel arbitrary and burdensome. With it, they become part of the organizational culture. Security is ultimately a shared responsibility, and users are often the first line of defense. Empowering them with knowledge is as important as deploying technical safeguards. Ultimately, secure password management is not just about technology, but about integrating people, processes, and systems. On the technical side, vaults, hashing algorithms, breach detection, and MFA reduce risks and strengthen defenses. On the human side, user education, careful policy design, and secure recovery flows ensure that people can follow safe practices without undue burden. Together, these elements form a comprehensive program that evolves with threats. Attackers will continue to target credentials because they remain the most direct way into systems. But by layering defenses, limiting exposure, and continuously improving, organizations make those attacks harder, slower, and less rewarding. The principle to remember is that password management is not static, it is a continuous journey. Success comes from balancing strong technical controls with human-centered design, ensuring both resilience against attackers and usability for legitimate users. Thanks for tuning in to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, your trusted source for cybersecurity news and insights. Remember to subscribe at baremetalcyber.com so you never miss an update. And visit cyberauthor.me for best-selling cybersecurity books that equip you with expert knowledge. Until next time, stay secure and stay vigilant.